All right, a little bit of Deontay Wilder news. As you can tell from the title, before I get into that, hit the thumbs up. Helps me out with the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel because that is what helps me out the most. And when you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. That way you can get updated when I drop the newest content like this. So, with that being said, let's get into the video. I'm joking. Anyways, check this out. Dereck Chisora. Dereck Chisora, he said that he believed Deontay Wilder is biding his time, that Shelly Finkel is a big dog in the boxing game when it comes to contracts, and he knows the law of boxing. And he said that he believes that Deontay Wilder is just standing off to the side, waiting for the two matches with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua to commence, so then he can sit down with the winner of that fight and make $80 million just by sitting down. That's right. Dereck Chisora believes that Deontay Wilder will be making at least $80 million to fight the winner out of their fight. Now, here's the thing about it. There's a couple little if factors here. All right, so if Tyson Fury wins, I could understand this point of view. I could understand where Dereck Chisora is coming from. However, if Tyson Fury gets beat both times, I know Anthony Joshua is not contractually binded in any way and has never been binded to Deontay Wilder. So that kind of makes this fight seem a little iffy, contingent on what Anthony Joshua wants to do. Now, Joshua said several times that he would still fight Deontay Wilder, even though Deontay Wilder does not have the belt. But that is not absolute, and that does not mean that it will actually happen. So with that being said, that could throw a monkey wrench in there. The other part of it is, if Tyson Fury wins 2 times, he's been very, very wishy-washy. I think that's the best way to say it. Wishy-washy about actually wanting to get in there and fight Deontay Wilder in the trilogy. Now, the thing about it is, I don't know if Tyson Fury beats Anthony Joshua twice, if he would be willing to fight Deontay Wilder a 3rd time. Now, Tyson Fury's on record saying because of all the excuses, because of all the lies, in his mind, lies, all the things that are trying to diminish him as a fighter, saying that he needed to cheat to win. He's already said that he's done with Deontay Wilder, that he'll never give him an opportunity. However, if Dereck Chisora, who was actually in the heavyweight business, who's been there for a very long time, maybe he has some inside source, I don't know. But if he is correct and Finkel has Tyson Fury by the nuts, as they say, if he's got him and there's nothing Fury can do but, I don't know, be stripped or sued, so to say, then Fury's going to have to do what he doesn't want to do and fight him if that is the case. I don't know if that's the case, but I mean, and then the flip side to that is, if Shelly does have him by the balls, right? Maybe, I'm just trying to think like how Dereck Chisora could come to this 80 million sit down after the 2 fights. The only other aspect that I could see is Shelly would have had to work out something with Bob Arum and Eddie Hearn saying that, look, we will not pursue this legally for the trilogy. We'll let y'all have the undisputed match. However, you have to sign here that y'all, the winner out of this fight, will fight me. So there, it will put Anthony Joshua on the hook. So he can't get away from not fighting Deontay Wilder. That's the only way legally I could see this actually happening, unless AJ, like I said, if he wins both times, just happens to want to fight him, which I think he will. I don't think AJ would run from Deontay Wilder. I think if AJ beats Tyson Fury, who has beat Deontay Wilder, I think he will call out Deontay Wilder at the end of the day. I really do. I don't think he's avoiding him. I don't think he's scared to fight him. And if he has all the belts and then he calls out Deontay Wilder, then we'll really know if Deontay Wilder wants to fight Anthony Joshua or not. Now, I'll say this. Deontay Wilder, he's already got a loss. He can't take it back, no matter how bad he wants to, unless he really does have evidence. If he does, I'd advise him to drop that evidence. Then the entire boxing community would be on his side. Everybody would look at Tyson Fury, say, get him out the sport, put him in jail, strip him of the titles, give Deontay Wilder the draw and the loss, and reverse those 2 wins. Because if he cheated in the second one, he more than likely found a way to cheat in the first one. If he has evidence, he needs to release it. But he hasn't. So that's why myself and a lot of people don't believe what he's saying. He's stated he has it, but he's never released it. I've never seen anybody have damning evidence that would get him who knows how much money he could sue for. He could have the guy kicked out of boxing, period, especially with blunt metal objects in his gloves. I mean, it's happened to fighters before where they went to jail for attempted manslaughter by doing stuff like that. And he'd be stripped of the title, but most important, the belt don't even matter. Most important to Deontay Wilder, he would have a draw and a win reversed. A draw and a loss reversed to a win. So that would give him 2 wins on his record where he has a draw and a loss. And I think that would be more important than even the belts. But again, I have to come back full circle to I just don't believe him because it's never been released. If he releases it for the last time, because I like to drive things in a lot so people really understand what I'm saying, because sometimes I feel like you have to say it more than once for it to sink in. If he does release it, I'm telling you right now, the entire boxing community, especially on YouTube, especially people who make boxing videos like myself, will completely annihilate Tyson Fury if that evidence comes out, regardless if we, at this point in time, believe Deontay Wilder or not. Regardless, it could be the most anti-Deontay Wilder person. And if that evidence comes out and is factual and true, I guarantee you it would flip that person around to go straight after making videos about Tyson Fury. But again, I will end where I began with that and say I don't believe he has evidence, and I don't believe that Tyson Fury cheated in the ways that they're trying to say he cheated. Now back to Dereck Chisora. So $80 million seems plausible price-wise because from all the rumors I have seen, all the articles I have read, pretty much they're talking about $100 million for both fights. So each fighter getting $100 million from the jump. That's not including pay-per-view sales, promotional sales, nothing. That is just straight, here's your flat pay, $100 million each. So if both fights do that big and do the type of numbers they think it's going to do, and I imagine it would, yeah, I could easily see both fighters making $2 million each. I mean, $2 million each. $100 million each, $200 million total. I can see that being the flat rate for both fighters. And I can definitely see Deontay Wilder being able to get at least a minimum of $80 million to fight the winner, because outside of Deontay Wilder, the marketability side, there's nobody else really that brings that much notoriety to the table. So even though Deontay Wilder lost, he's still a huge name. He's still a huge knockout artist, and he's still got a lot of diehard fans. So he brings a lot of money. I mean, it's just the facts. Like him, love him, hate him, or you're just straight ignoring him at this point. The bottom line is the dude's still fighting an AJ or a Fury at this point with all the controversy, brings a hell of a lot of money to the table. So $80 million, he can make easily, if not more. He may be able to get a flat $100 million like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua in their upcoming fight. Now, the other thing, too, is I wanted to say that Dereck Chisora did say that he believes, because he said Wilder's binding his time, that the Fury and AJ fight are going to happen. Now, this is where, again, coming back legally, it confuses me to what Chisora may or may not know, because, again, I said he did say that Finkel is a big dog on the legal side of boxing. Here's my issue. Well, if Fury and Wilder were supposed to fight before AJ and Fury, then if the contract wasn't binding enough to make that happen, then how is it going to be binding enough to make it happen after their 2 fights? And that's assuming they even have 2 fights, because they could have a trilogy. It could come out, AJ wins the first one, Fury wins the next one, and somebody else wins the third one. Or Fury could win the first one, AJ could win the second one, and then whomever could win the last one, which I think is the more plausible. Now, I know Fury's got ring rust, as he claims to have, but I just think, I don't know. I just feel like Fury's going to do some things that AJ's not going to be ready for, and a rematch would really help him out versus Fury. Whereas AJ is just going to do what we've seen AJ do. He's not as versatile in his ways of attacks like Tyson Fury is. Tyson Fury, I mean, there's so many different examples of him fighting to where his versatility is just, it's too unpredictable. You don't know if he's going to fight at range, fight on the inside, fight in mid-range, fight on the back foot and just circle you the whole time. You don't know if he's going to jab, jab, grab you. I mean, it's just, Fury is very hard to read how he's going to attack you because he's had so many different ways that he's fought in his fights that it's very hard to train for somebody like him. Very hard. And I've heard fighters say that before, that he's very hard to train for because of his versatility. That's where I think, I would say, like, if I rated the three of them, because people will argue that those are still the three biggest names, I would say that Tyson Fury is probably the most versatile out of all of them. Deontay Wilder, I think, has the most explosive power out of all of them. And I think Anthony Joshua, like that's, let me go back to Deontay Wilder real fast. I think he's got the most explosive power out of all of them, but technically I don't think he's as good as the three. I think he off of one-shotting, like, whoop-pow, what the fuck just hit me? I think he's got the strongest. And I think his punches come across the fastest. So I think he's got the quickest single punches. And I'll bring that up with AJ next, what I mean by that. I think he's got the quickest single punches. I think he could dart across the ring the fastest. And I think he has the most explosive power. Now, when it comes to AJ, I think AJ has got more of a thudding type power. It's not the type of power that would just put your lights out with one solid punch, but it's the type of punch that just takes chunks out of a wall. Whereas Deontay Wilder, to me, doesn't really take chunks out of the wall. He just kind of pushes the wall over. But if the wall, say a wall could get up, if it goes down and gets back up, it doesn't really have any pieces knocked off of it. It's more of like a flashbang type effect that it disoriented the wall. Whereas when AJ's hitting it, he's taking little bitty chunks out of the wall with each hit until the wall just crumbles and has nothing left. So I think his power is more of a thudding, long-lasting type power. I think he's a lot quicker at putting combinations together, but a lot slower with the single punch. What I mean by single punches is, because I said I would bring it up, is attacking from range, where you're just throwing a quick jab or a quick straight. I think he is much slower at doing that than, say, a Deontay Wilder or even a Tyson Fury. But when he gets into mid-range, he can let his hands go in combinations and have more accuracy than both those two fighters, in my opinion. So again, they all have an advantage over the other one. They're the three biggest names. That's the point I'm trying to get to. And I don't know how it's going to go, because you got to ask yourself, Deontay Wilder cannot stay stagnant. He cannot bind his time for two fights to happen, because you figure if one happens in June, then the next one's probably going to happen sometime around December. That I would assume that's what they're going to shoot for. They're going to try to do two fights this year between Fury and AJ. And let's just assume that Fury wins both to make it easy. So Deontay Wilder needs to have at least two fights in between. He can't just sit stagnant. He's already been stagnant for a year. He can't stay stagnant for another year. You know, Tyson Fury's already been out there talking about he's upset that he hasn't fought. And it'll be, 16 months by the time he gets in the ring with AJ? He said he at least wanted a tune-up or two. So Wilder needs the same thing. And I don't know who Wilder fights, because the thing about it is Wilder's got to be careful with who he fights. Because if he fights the wrong guy and loses, then $80 million talks go out the window. If he fights a tomato can, then he's going to get a lot of backlash from a lot of hardcore boxing fans who have been watching him, who have already said that he hasn't fought the hardest opposition. So he's in a very hard spot. Like, truthfully, I think Deontay Wilder needs to fight a upper tier guy but a guy that's more or less kind of tailor-made for him to beat. Like, it's a big name. He's a top 10 fighter, but one that you can exploit and hurt. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he needs. He needs a big name, but a safe name stylistically. Like, when you look at him on paper, Wilder should win because they're open to be hit. I'll do another video to get on, like, list of fighters that I think are up there that would complement his style. But I'm not going to keep this video going on for too much longer because I've already probably been talking for like 20, 30 minutes. But to close out, come back full circle. If it is true what Dereck Chisora is saying, and then that Wilder does have some type of hold on Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua after they fight in their 2 fights, then yes, I do believe that 80 million he could definitely get as long as in between waiting he doesn't lose. I think that 80 million easily, if not more. So I don't think Dereck Chisora is off base with the amount of money that he's talking about, because here it is a year later and people are still talking about the rematch between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. So it'll be a huge fight, whoever he gets in there with at the top, aka Fury or AJ. And again, for the final time, and we're going to end the video here, I definitely believe he would get a minimum of 80 million just to walk into the fight. That's not including pay-per-view sales. That's not including revenue from like merchandise, etc. That to me is just to get him in there, in that square circle. I can see 80 million being a very good starting point, if not more. Thank y'all for watching. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Do y'all think Dereck Chisora is telling the truth? Do y'all think he's off basis? Do y'all think he's just trying to be in the media? What do y'all think? Do y'all think Deontay Wilder is going to be able to fight Tyson Fury after the 2 fights contractually because of what they signed before? Do you think he's going to be able to fight AJ? Do you think there's some way that in the background they worked out to where Wilder gets the winner out of their double or trilogy fight? What do y'all think? Y'all think this is true or off base? Let me know in the comment section.